Next up, it is 25th place Andrew Dovale playing All Might 3 on the good symbol. A very big deck for an All Might 3 deck, right? We started with a lot of like 50, 54 card, 6 hand size aggro. Now we're getting to like these 66 card decks with lots of tech piece, lots of interaction. And yeah, we've only got 2 of these in both the All Might 3s ended up right next to each other. But the first one was Andrew Dovale. And he has 2 Capture Evildoers mainboarded, 2-sided. That's pretty normal, right? Some decks this might be dead. Some decks this might be a dead card. You know, you might not get to steal momentum, but you want to always have momentum. So having it mainboarded is cool. It's a breaker block. I will say, every time they have both, I very, very, very rarely have anyone enhance and steal my momentum and not have a second Capture Evildoers that just have like the world's most explosive turn. So I'm not a huge fan of like personally running the 2 and 2, but it is a tried and true strategy. It is something a lot of people have found success with, and it makes a lot of sense. 4 Back Alley Haymaker, because why would you not? 1 for all Full Cowling Strike. This is our first sighting of this card. It's very cool. I don't think we've seen a deck on these symbols yet, actually. So we haven't had a chance to see this card yet. But 1 for all Full Cowling 5% strike is super, super interesting because with 1 with nature, it's not that unlikely that we dump our hand on like our 3rd attack. And you can do some really interesting sequencing. On top of that, this is basically the first version of Somnambulism, right? This was the first card that committed our rival's character. So this is like a force you to block sort of situation. And if you're holding 3 cards in your hand, this is like a leadoff attack, just going 7 high for 6. Solid stats, really obnoxious to deal with. You drop a 1 with nature on top of this baby, like your character is getting committed pretty fucking fast. So unfortunately, I have gotten some insider info that Andrew Dovale lost to a Midnight, which Midnight doesn't give a fuck if you commit her. So, you know, Midnight will just commit herself for -1 speed and take the attack. You know what I mean? Like, she's not gonna care too much, but that is super interesting to have here. This is a card I want to play a lot more of, but my broke ass doesn't own any, so this is a very, very cool card. It fell out of favor. I think a lot of people were trying to run this, and it became like a really generic stat stick, and like there's a decent amount of set 1 characters that either commit or don't care about being committed, but for the ones that do, characters like Eraserhead were showing up quite a bit. So I think the biggest issue is characters you want to commit the most are just really good at blocking, and this doesn't say completely block, right? Like you can block within a race, and Breaker won this, and you get to keep your character ready. So yeah, you took damage, but you get to block everything else afterwards. So it's not the biggest hate piece, unfortunately. It was pretty good against like Kirishimas for a while because they don't actually get to respond. If they don't block, they get immediately committed before they get a chance to respond. So maybe it was some holdout from that format, but very, very cool to see this piece here, and very interesting if, you know, it's very interesting to see how it would have done against characters other than Midnight, basically. Next up is Hard Chop, this time at a 4 of. Again, I can't stress how much I hate playing against this card, but all the way back in set 1, I did a deck profile when I made top 8 at the first ever provisional playing this character, and Hard Chop is the freest 7 damage you will ever send at somebody. With the way turn 2 is set up now, 2 cards will never keep you alive, and it's doubly true if you're playing against All Might 3, and it's triply true if it's against Hard Chop. So this is the most damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of attack, in my opinion. It is incredibly taxing to deal with. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. This thing comes in for massive damage. You do have to worry, I guess, about like recovery times being discarded, but if we're putting a bunch of speed on things after the harden chop, like they're gonna wish that they had that recovery time, right? So not the biggest deal in the world necessarily if they go that route of blocking this and then getting rid of their tech piece that helps them against fast attacks to draw more cards. So like this is a very, very hard to deal with attack, and I really like it. And I would have to mention that it's very, very good with All Might 3 because you commit a face down foundation to pay for the cost to draw 2 cards, and then you destroy it and you build a new one. So absolutely insanely good leadoff attack, very good extension attack. Yeah, it's just you can turn All Might 3 into E commit, draw 2 cards. Absolutely insane. Heroic Strike was a card we saw getting a lot of popularity at the end of set 2. Notably, it's like stun, but it's not stun. So you cannot cancel it with resistance. You can't hate on it with keyword stuff. It gets around quite a few things, which is really, really nice. And probably I should have played a lot more of this card in the past, but it is what it is. And then Harden Jab does a lot of the same things that Chop does as far as interacting with All Might 3. Does really good stuff with Small and Limber. I didn't even mention that with Harden Chop. You know, we'll talk about that with Small and Limber when we get there. But yeah, this is just like a really staple value-based build where your opponent's not going to want to be like... Your opponent's going to be encouraged to defend against these attacks, but they're not going to know how and when and how far to defend. So you're going to get a lot of free mileage from stuff. So this deck is like very difficult to know when and where to play defense against. And I think that that's really smart. I think despite the performance, right, despite the placing, I think that this was a very good idea. And that's what we've seen a lot, right? We've seen a lot of like great ideas on paper, and even the decks where we've talked about they might not have executed super well, they still had like the thought process. But I think this is a deck where no one knew that Rochester was going to be breaking out this fucked up Midnight deck, and it's probably just a bad matchup into Midnight. You know, this is a deck that wants to accrue tons and tons and tons of advantage off of really innocuous setups, and like, you know, it's got resource management on the back end of things. It's got free draw costs on offense. It is just kind of annoying to deal with, but yeah, this is a really strong character that a lot of people hate dealing with. But at the highest level of competition, you're probably going to have people who can play around it a little better, I suppose. But again, you know, single elimination bracket, what can you do? Let's go to the foundations, because this is the first time we've seen 4x pull no punches, I believe. You know, we're working our way from 32nd all the way up to first. And I'm a big fan of this card. This card's great with All Might, who gets tons of great extension that we talked about. So dealing with like the Capture Evil Doers main boarded, the best momentum payoff for this, you know, for this symbol, probably, yeah, like I don't think there's a better momentum payoff, right? EX2 and like Powerful 4. I think Forceful Blow, right? Like maybe that's a good momentum payoff, but anyways, a good deadlock threat, a great way to get momentum, a great way to clear your card pool, just tons of great stuff you can do with this. Really surprised we didn't see more of it, but you know, it is what it is. A lot of people have reasons. And again, this is the 66 card deck, right? Like this is a huge deck compared to the 54 card decks that aren't running it. So when it comes down to personal choice, like when you're trimming cards to keep the deck really, really tight knit, I can see why Pull No Punches wouldn't make it. But if you're going to have a 66 card deck with a character that wants to draw a shitload of cards, I definitely think you need to have this as at least a deadlock threat. So, and then One with Nature as a 4 of, I like this a lot. It makes sense. All Might 3 has plenty of ways to discard cards. We've got full Cowling Strike in here. It's just a staple. It is what it is. You know, this card's going to be around probably for a long time. Taiyaki Fanatic, another deadlock threat, which is really strong. This is a great way to cancel speed and damage resets. It's a great way to cancel Student of the Art. I think that that's one of the best ways to fuck with Ojiro is to cancel Student of the Art. So this is a very nice piece. I wish it was a little more impactful, but like, I mean, what can you ask for? It's a 2/5. This could have easily been a 2/4, and a lot of people would not have blinked at it. So I'm just grateful this card is a 2/5. Going out to fight some villains. Now, this is the spiciest tech where I have almost never seen this in a Top Cuts list before, and it's kind of amazing because it is a 2/5 that has damage reduction, albeit with a lot of caveats, but it also has -3 speed on it. And I think a lot of people get thrown off because it shares 2 symbols with Specialist of Sound, which we see as a 4 of as well, so it's 4 of both. And it doesn't have a good block mod, so I think a lot of people look at the conditional nature of this card, but like, Chaos is the best symbol right now. Like, I mean, it has to be. With hindsight, it has to be the best symbol, right? You know, just pound for pound, it dominated Nads. It won Worlds. All 3 majors were won by Chaos. Like, am I tripping that it's the best symbol? So, I mean, that has to count for something. And while -2 damage isn't like the most, again, it if you're not blocking, if you can't do anything else anyways, I mean, it might shave off just enough. And on top of that, everybody wants to pump speed. Everybody wants to put speed and damage on their attacks, and this card is modular about both. So it doesn't get a lot of play because defense is cringe, but I think Andrew Dovale, like many people, was on the bottom side of the bracket, right? Like, I really need to take a look at this bracket and find out where people were specifically, because I think almost everyone who went first advanced, which is not super surprising, but like, it might actually be like 14 or 15 out of 16. So he was on the top side at 15 according to Tim Keefe. So yeah, okay. So he went first. So this is, you know, this is the kind of thing where like making an informed decision, right? Like, if he was on the bottom side, I could easily see committing to a purely defensive card. And I think that's why you don't see this, because there's so many cards that are good at playing both sides of the board. But going out to fight some villains is only minus damage, only -3 speed. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. So this is one of the people that actually fell from the top seed, which, you know, again, it is what it is. But so, yeah, going out to fight some villains, not something you see a lot, but I think this card is solid. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Is -3 speed only good if you can apply it to a base speed attack, but you also have Specialist of Sound like on 2 out of 3 symbols, and you have Heroic Lineage on the 3rd one? I don't know. Maybe that's why. It also pairs with Resistance on 2 symbols, so I think this should show up more. I think this card should show up more. New training method should be a 4 of in most decks on its symbols. It's super good. And Andrew has a big enough deck, and he's, you know, Andrew Dovale is certainly not worried about 4 checks. It's the only 4 check, right? Oh, we have another one. Okay, we have small numbers, yeah. So we're not worried about 4 checks. We're vibing. It's fine. Male Bonding as a 3 of. This is just more ramp, more like I'm a 30 health character, get fucked. It's just 2 cards in 1 for a 1 diff. What else can you ask for? Oh, I guess you could ask for Stat Pump. Here's usually 2 cards in 1, but also with +1/+1. So, you know, this is another card. Like, there's so many cards here, and there's so many combinations that allow you to basically just refund half of All Might 3's cost to draw 2 cards that it's hard to hate. Like, it's super hard to hate on this deck list. It seems like he really went to max out his synergies, you know, with the character draw. It seemed like he made really good decisions based on, like, okay, how many cards is my opponent going to hold? Right? And how many attacks can they defend against? So, like, I don't know. This looks very set one for the most part. Like, there's a lot of set one cards here. But they all work so well together. Like, they look so, so good. So, man. Yeah, it makes sense. So many of these cards synergize well from set one with All Might 3. And so, self-sacrifice. Resistance is here because stun is really strong. But also, minus damage combined with going out to fight some villains could be really, really impactful, especially against Electric Jolt decks. They're basically forced to play Electric Jolt first into 2 copies of Resistance or, both of these cards. If you have the total -4 somehow. So, really, really interesting stuff to dictate the pace. Manly Passionate Guy is a 3 of. Love this card a lot. It's more ramp. I hate that we live in a world where Male Bonding and Manly Passionate Guy exist together on all 3 symbols and the same block zone. There's something wrong about this, but at the same time, I don't think anyone cares. There's something wrong about this somewhere, but who gives a fuck? You can't fix it. But yeah, this is just a really strong card. Celebrity Status works so good with All Might. Anyone who draws on demand, it works really good with. My favorite plays is actually to put a 5 on top of my deck when I need it, but it's pretty rare you get to do that without Detroit Smash. So I'm very interested if he ever had a foundation in momentum that he knew about. You could capture a random card to the top, but interesting stuff. And then it can't be fixed as a 4 of. That is the correct number. Sideboard wise, you have 2+ Ultra. We're set 1 character, so we absolutely are fine with running this. But again, it's in the side because One with Nature exists. Mid attacks are not the most, prevalent. What are you blocking with this usually, right? What's the fastest mid attack? An EX'd out Back Alley Haymaker? You're blocking Electric Jolt with this. You're blocking Double Jab Pummel with this. Where are the mids in here? Hard Jab, Back Alley, right? So I can see why not many people are really running this mainboarded, but not seeing people sideboard it, I think is a little weird. I think it's a little weird. 2 Taiyaki Fanatic for those super deadlock games. Again, I think this is really good into Ojiro just because he relies on that student of the art so much. This could be clutch against Friend of Animals. This could be pretty clutch if your opponent really needs momentum to close the game out. I'm trying to think of what other linchpin foundation or asset enhances are existing, because so far we've seen basically no assets, right? And then the ones that you would see that are really good probably have responses and forms on them. Canceling UA High could be good, but who's playing UA High? Only idiots play that card. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. 2 So Manly in the sideboard. We've seen this from multiple symbols. We've seen this multiple times. So, and then To the Rescue, also in the sideboard is, I don't know, interesting. This is a card I would kind of expect to see mainboarded in this list. I could maybe see siding out 2 going to fight some villains for it, but block zone wise, we probably, we're getting low blocks for a card that's pretty much a non-block, so very interesting. Although the more I think about it, if I'm running any number of going out to fight some villains, I think I'd like to run 4 of. So all in all, this is just a very, very solid deck. It is doing all kinds of great things with resource management. But I do think that there is definitely room for improvement, right? It's easy to say with hindsight, and when you're taking the limited environment of the HLC where you know who you're going to fight tomorrow and you have to guess what they're going to play, this is a great deck when you're not trying to make the soul read. I think this is a deck that is you know, very well tuned to fight a bunch of different decks. And so I think he was thinking, you know, let me win the tournament, right? Like, let me not just try to snipe my round one opponent or try to counter tech. And I mean, I think he played Tim Keefe round one, and Tim Keefe can play fucking anything he wants. So, you know, I think this was a really smart choice. And, you know, sometimes you get got, man. I really like this deck. Obviously, there's changes everybody would make, right? There's personal little choices you would change, but I think these are pretty much all solid choices. What do you guys think? What would you change from this deck list if you wanted to play All Might 3? Are you down with going out to fight some villains? Have you ever played this card before? Let me know in the comments below. Either way, congratulations to Andrew Dovale. He is a tried and true card game player. He is, of course, DBS champion. You know, he has credibility through multiple card games now, and really happy to have him in the community, man. He's a really swell dude. We sat down at Fogo de Chao together, and I just had an awesome time. So really happy Andrew's in the community. Really swell dude. You know, other than that, I hope to see him at more events in the future, man. Hopefully other card games don't pull him away, don't pull his attention away, because it was really great to see him in Vegas, and I hope to see him at the future Hero League Championships.